Okay, here I am. One, two. So I'm here now. I don't know if anyone can hear me, but I can't hear anyone.
I can hear you.
Ah, there he is. Hello, John.
How are you?
I am very well.
Good.
And you?
Fine. I've decided just to go with my name as an image. How's that?
That's okay. We prefer to see you.
So
There you go. Good for
sure.
And France is at work, looking all very professional.
France. All right. So how does this look? It's okay? It looks okay. The lighting's all right? I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Voice you can hear fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good?
Good.
Excellent. Water. How was everybody's day?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I actually did 3 hours of presentation this morning to my old university, explaining to them what I've been doing with my life since I left uni.
Excellent.
That was fantastic.
Fantastic.
And I got paid to do it.
That's very good. Even better.
Cool.
An absolute fortune. I think it's they pay 30 hours an hour, 30 euros an hour, you know.
Hey, it's a kick shows, huh?
The start of a beautiful adventure. Who knows?
Exactly. Exactly. I was doing so. Here we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So,
So we got. How is the sound? Do I sound okay? Not too loud?
No, you sound good.
No, it's okay. What about me?
Try and speak more, Hans.
It's too slow? It's too low?
No,
Or
it's
fine?
okay, I think.
It's okay? Okay.
It's okay.
Just to tell you, Lilian is the administrator.
Yeah, I saw your message.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I was thinking, who is that?
Yeah, and you made me a bit afraid, I must say. I was a bit scared when you said it's not the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. You know, all this technology can always let us down on
Ouais,
the.
exact. On sait jamais ce qui peut arriver.
Voilà, exactly.
Et France,
Yes.
comme tu es là, tu regardes ton écran?
Ouais, I need to be more like this, I guess. Is it like?
Ouais, c'est là.
Yeah,
Tout à fait.
Better? Okay.
Stop.
Because I'm looking at a black screen, which is for me. Ah oui, I can move.
Ah, okay.
As well. Voilà, it's better. I didn't have time to go home, so I did it from work.
Oh, it's fine. Where are you? Where's your office?
We have two offices, one in Confédération Centre,
Yeah.
which is the mall that is getting empty because of some work. It's next to Payot. You must know Payot in the city.
Yeah.
And then we have one in Montbriand, which is behind the station. So one advantage to Montbriand is that you have the lake. So if you want to do a run at lunchtime, it's fine. And if you are in the city center, it's also good for the shopping. Voilà. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
I mean, people will start to join. I don't expect them to do it well before 8 o'clock.
No, that's fine. They'll even be joining in later if they come too, I'm sure. So
I think we're all set. There's nothing.
Yeah, if you want to do something else in between, that's fine. I can stop my video as
Get
well.
a glass of water ready. I read John's tips just half an hour ago.
exactly. Well done. I have my bottle. I should probably put it in a glass. It would look better. Right. Now I gotta go.
Okay.
So Thierry.
Yeah.
I have two choices. I have this.
Yeah.
And I have this.
Oh.
I won't drink this on the call.
Yeah. I haven't touched this stuff. You know, I thought, no, I shouldn't do it. Even though I spend the whole morning speaking to these students and telling them beer stories.
I was doing a training as well. It was a day, full day on storytelling, and I have tomorrow morning to go back.
Yep. Excellent. How is your game coming along? Are you making a bit of money with it? Are you selling?
Well, we're still making money back from what we invested in. Every day it sells 1 or 2 apps on the thing, and we have a few people licensing the game.
Yep.
So on the whole, yeah, we're getting it's coming in, but it's slow. We need to figure out a better way of promoting the game.
I was going to ask you. So how does the game work? Because I saw there was an app the other day.
Yeah.
And how does it work? What do you have to do when you're in the game?
Okay, so hang on. Do we have time? Oh, yeah,
do we have time or not?
Yeah.
Maybe I can ask you that question at the end if we have time.
Yeah, for absolutely. Well, hang on, just a second.
Because we actually got we're going to mention it. So, but if you want, we can proper into that.
So here's the app.
Yeah.
Okay, attends. So there's us.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing, so I'm looking this backwards. So you hit play.
Yep.
And then, for example, language, you've got 6 languages.
Yep.
So if we go English, and then themes, you have 3 themes so far. We have the classic, the business, and the family theme.
Yep.
So say you pick business. And so let's say I'm going to give you red. So I say Thierry and John. So, and we can play competitive where you score the other players, or you can turn that off. So I'll just play here and I'll just show you here. So, So there's the board. I can't see whose turn it is, but I'm going to roll the dice.
Yep.
And that is, okay, so it's choice. So for example, if I do topic, and this is the business theme. So I pick topic. So here I got to pick a card. And what's the topic? Auditors.
Auditors, yeah.
So parce que c'est business. So il y a 50 cartes sujets, 50 cartes défis. So 100 cartes pour chaque thème. And then with this one, for this one, you have to add content. So c'est à toi de choisir. Soit une citation, raconte une histoire, you evoke the senses, call to action.
Okay.
And then you go here, and then you stand up.
Boom.
Boom, and you speak.
Okay.
So it comes up. So there's ones where people can, you either pick cards. There's ones where people can, you can ask the other players a question. Yep. There's ones where a person can just speak on whatever they want. It's carte blanche.
Yep. Do you use that in your workshops?
I do.
Yeah. That's great.
It's fun. It's a fun way for people to get a little bit of experience, having a little fun.
Making as a game is the trick.
It is. And the interesting thing about the game, for me, the most satisfying thing is when I've seen people we've played it, and when we were testing it out, a lot of people are not a big surprise. They're nervous about playing at the beginning. But what happens is, so they give their speech, everybody claps, and they sit down. And then they watch the other player's speech, and they're clapping for them. And pretty soon, it's their turn again. And after about 2 or 3 times, they realize, I mean, there's so little time in between the speeches, they don't have time to get nervous all over again. And then they start having fun. Yeah. So that's what I think is that's for me has been the best thing, seeing people play the game.
Very good. Very good. Okay, 7:56.
Mm-hmm. I'm still here. Who's there? Oh, Stefka, Helen. I saw Gancho up there.
Yeah. Gancho's here.
Hi, John.
Hey, Gancho.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Apart from the fact that it's Monday. But it's every week Monday, so I'm used to.
When I do my workshops, I tell people when they ask about questions, how to answer questions, I say, first thing you have to do is learn to welcome questions, because they're like Monday mornings. They're going to come around regularly, so you might as well enjoy them.
Okay, France, you have very good, fancy office.
Hello, Goncho. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm not connecting from my office because it's not so good as yours.
Okay.
If you come and see it, you will be. You will.
May I say that
You will be shocked.
I'm still at work?
Oh, I'm now at home. I thought connected from work, but decided to come back home.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, we'll start in 2 minutes, if you don't mind, just to make sure that people arrive.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we have Hélène. Hélène, can you hear us?
She can.
Yes, loud and clear.
Ah, cool.
Hello,
Great.
Hélène.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I see you're all drinking water. I'm having a glass of wine. I hope that's okay, John.
You just
Oh,
do that.
perfect. I'm in good company then.
You just do that, Helen.
But I can only have a glass of wine before it starts. Then when it starts,
You're on the water.
I shift to
Man.
this.
Very wise.
It's for the creativity. Huh?
Exactly.
And we have Manugira. Sorry, what's
Eric
your
Manuguera, oui.
Oh, hello, Eric. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello,
Hello, John.
Hello.
Hello.
We have also Beatrice.
Eric is the president of Expression Lausanne.
Ah, okay, great.
So great to have him here.
Cool. Beatrice, you joined us as well?
Hey, Beatrice. Let's see.
Beatrice, you can hear us? No. Maybe she has technical issue.
I think
I don't have a mic. Okay, but I'm sure she can hear us because she replied. That's cool. By the way, you can ask question in the chat box.
I'm going to ask myself a question.
Hello, Clara. Ah, we see Switzerland is.
C'est fort.
Ouais.
Hey, Clara.
Yeah, hi.
Jó estét.
Jó estét.
Okay.
You're in the office.
So Lilian is actually going to mute everybody apart from Thierry, John, and myself, and we can start because now it's 8 p.m. If you have the same time on your telephone.
Yep.
I would like to first thank very much John Zimmer for making the time to do this webinar with us. It's very special to us. You know me, I guess. I took the responsibility of the webinar chair this year, and we organize several webinars throughout the year on several topics. I just want to say that I know John for 6 years in Toastmasters. And I want to say he's a special member because he wins contests, but he also shares his techniques, how to win them. So this is very generous from him. Thierry and I have prepared a series of questions that we will ask John. And John do not know any of them. He wanted to make it more as a conversation. In terms of the format, so we will have 45 minutes, we believe, about being an interview with John, and then we will have 15 minutes to ask whatever question we have for John. You can also use the chat box if you have a question that pop up in your mind during the interview. And then I would like to give the floor to Thierry so that he introduce John to us.
Thank you, France. Yeah, good evening, everyone. So before we start, for those of you who may not know John, I'll just give you a very brief introduction, just to give you a bit of background. So John is originally from Toronto in Canada. He started his career as a lawyer back there, and in the late 90s, John had an opportunity to work at the UN in Geneva. So I think he just didn't hesitate. He put the whole family on a plane to Switzerland, and that's where they all still live today. He joined Toastmasters, from what I know, back in 2007, and his home club is the International Geneva Toastmasters Club. Now, since 2015, John is a full-time professional public speaker, trainer, and coach. I believe he actually started that in 2005. I think it's become a full-time job in 2015. Now, it would be an understatement that John is passionate about public speaking, obviously. He has won many speaking contests at district level, like this year when he won the International Speech Contest and the Evaluation Contest in Athens. Besides that, John is a dedicated and highly respected member of the Toastmasters community. He regularly performs training sessions, for example. He runs a blog on the internet about public speaking. It's called mannerofspeaking.org. Mannerofspeaking.org. If you don't know it, we'll write that in the chat box. And he's also the co-inventor of the first ever public speaking game. It's called Rhetoric, and if we have time, we'll talk about Rhetoric as well. So, good evening, John. How are you? Have we got John here? John is gone.
He just told me that Thierry froze, and I thought, oh, amazing, because I saw that he froze on the screen.
We have lost John.
He has a connection issue.
You frightened John. Come on.
We fried the guest. That's awesome. So
he should be back soon, I guess.
Just to talk about Rhetoric for a couple of seconds, for those of you who didn't know, so John is the co-inventor of that public speaking game that he invented together with another public speaker. It's a game you can actually buy as a board game, but they've also made an app that you can download on Android and iTunes, Apple, you can download it, you have to pay for it, and it's very interactive. It's all about public speaking, obviously. And so if you have time, just look it up. But if you go on the, I'll put the address of that job, of that blog now, in the chat box, mannerofspeaking.org. There you go. So if you go there, there's a link somewhere to that game. So that's where you can have a look at it. I'm not making a promo for it. I'm not a shareholder or anything. It's up to you guys.
Okay.
Oh, I believe John is back.
John is back?
I believe John is back.
John is back.
I'm back. My God, after all that.
Did you spill your glass of wine on your computer?
I didn't touch anything, I swear.
Okay, John. I don't know how much you heard, but I just explained people about that you were the co-inventor of the first ever public speaking game, Rhetoric.
Perfect.
And the first question was, how are you?
I am fine. It's great to be here. Hello to the hundreds and thousands of Toastmasters in District 109 on this call. No, it's great to be here. And I applaud both you and France for this initiative. I think it's given our district, which is a very weird geographical shape, from Italy up to Switzerland, then down into Greece and Bulgaria and Cyprus and other places there. I think it's great having these webinars. It's a great way to bring people together.
Fantastic. Well, it's a great pleasure to have you with us, John. Thank you very much. And we know you have a busy schedule, so we won't waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. France, the floor is yours with the first questions.
Yes. So John, you won in Athens at the end of May at the district conference. How did you prepare yourself mentally for the international competition 3 months afterwards? You had 3 months of a break.
It's interesting because my approach this year, this was the second time I won the international speech contest at the district level and went then to the World Championships. The first time was 5 years ago when I went to Cincinnati, and that summer I prepared. I gave the speech, I don't know how many times. I gave it in Switzerland, I gave it in Germany, I traveled, I recorded myself. This time was very different. This time I told myself, I'm going to know the speech. I'm going to have it well prepared, but I don't want to overdo it, because I think you can overcook a speech, if I put it that way. You can rehearse a speech too much, and when you go and give it on stage, it doesn't feel natural. So this time it was really, I conferred with, a few people that I know, and we've been exchanging messages over the years on speeches, helping each other. Tweaked the speech a few times. There was an event in London where they had all the European champions invited up, so I went to that. That was a fun long weekend with my wife in London, and I rehearsed it there. But generally, it was just keeping the speech fresh in my head to get ready for Chicago.
Okay, makes sense. Can we know who did you ask to coach you within your friends and family?
Sure. When it comes to the text of the speech, two Toastmasters here in Europe, very good friends. We've been friends for a long time, and we've helped each other out on speeches. And are Bob Mole, he's an American living in Paris, and Mel Kelly, he's an Irishman living in Munich. Both Bob and Mel have won at the district level. Bob won the international speech, and he's placed in a couple of other contests. And Mel has placed in the international speech, but he's won evaluation and table topics and humorous as well. And so they were really always very helpful, giving advice on the text of the speech.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, John. John, just a little technical thing. Are you able to have your microphone level a bit up? There's a couple of people who mentioned they thought your volume was a bit low.
Let me just check here.
I can hear you fine myself, but if you can, just that would be great.
Maybe I'll move it closer. If I speak like this, how is that?
That's excellent for me. I think, what do people say in the chat room? Much better.
Much better. Okay, I think just had to move it closer. Good.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Now, to understand what's at stake with this contest, now there are about 30,000 Toastmasters members who compete at club level, okay? Overall, globally speaking. Now, can you tell us how many people actually compete at the semifinals level in Chicago?
Of the 30 or 35,000 who enter, there are 106.
106
who make it down to the finals. And at the World Championship, for the last time this year, the format was there were 10 semifinals, each one with 9 or 10 speakers. And the winners of each of those semifinals move on to compete into the finals.
So 10 people in the final.
That's it.
Okay, thanks. Now, a little question that is often asked to people that compete. How many times do you think you rehearsed your speech since you started at the club level until you got there?
Out loud, I can tell you not very much, probably a dozen times or so. But in my head, I don't know how many times. I always go over my speeches in my head, and I actually visualize myself on the stage as well, giving the speech, seeing the reaction of the audience. So it's an interesting question, but the true number, I don't know. It's a lot, but most of it, it's in my head. I go through it and I get a sense of how I want it to come out, because for me, rehearsing out loud, I think, is important. But a lot of people say, rehearse in front of a mirror or in a room. And for me, it just doesn't sound natural. And I'd rather, like I was telling France, I'd rather not overdo it out loud. I'd rather keep the speech fresh in my mind. I know what I want to say, but if I give the speech 3 times, it won't come out exactly the same way each time.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, that was actually the next question, but you've already answered that, which was, how do you keep the speech delivery fresh or spontaneous? So that's the trick from what you're saying, is to not overdo it.
To not overdo it. And also, I try not to memorize it. I mean, a lot of it, I know what I want to say. And if you say it often enough, then of course, a lot of it will come out the same way. But for me, what's more important is knowing that you want to go from A to B to C to D. And then if it comes out a little bit differently each time, it doesn't matter. The key thing is that you go through the points and hit the points you want to make.
Thanks.
I have a question for John regarding the night previous to the speech delivery. What did you do? How was your night? Did you sleep well? Did you enjoy a nice meal? We want to know a little bit about you.
Like the old saying, the condemned shall eat a hearty meal. No, I had a very good time. I was in Chicago. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't come this time because of work, but my oldest daughter, Alexandra, who's going to school in the US right now, she was over in Chicago with me. And so we had a very, we had an enjoyable night out the night before. Nothing late, of course, not too much, certainly not too much wine or beer. But my semifinal was at 8 o'clock at night the next day. It wasn't in the morning; it was in the evening. So I had the whole day to wait until my semifinal.
And actually, on the same topic, what did you do to calm your nerves before the speech? Let's say an hour before, 15 minutes before. Do you have any personal tips you could share with us?
Whenever I have a big speaking engagement in the evening, what I will typically do in the morning is I will do some exercise. So you've got the endorphins going through the body the whole day. So I did a bit of that. I went over to the conference center, which was very close to our Airbnb, and I watched a few speeches from the first round of the semifinals, just to get a sense of the room and to watch and just to enjoy some of the other speeches, which was nice. And then it's just, I find in the afternoon, I took a nap. And then after you wake up, you shower, you get ready. And then as the speech time approaches, you've got to start getting yourself pumped up, not in a crazy way, but in a real focused, energetic, I'm ready, here we go, let's have fun, and go.
Okay. What were you thinking when you walked on stage? Were you in your own bubble? You saw yourself from the top, or you were very natural and you came on stage like if you were doing a club speech, and that's it?
On my blog, I wrote about a concept, a word that I learned from the Zulu language in South Africa called sawubona, and it's a greeting that they give in South Africa from one person to another. And what it means is, it means I see you, and it means not just I see you standing in front of me, whatever you're wearing and whatever color your hair is, that kind of thing, but it's more I see you as a person with a life as every bit as complex as mine. And so whenever I go on the stage to speak, like even today, I was doing a training for a corporate client in the morning, as meeting the people for the first time. When I go on the stage, what I'm thinking is, Sawubona, I see the audience. This is for you. And I'm not focusing on myself. I think it's important for speakers not to focus this way, but rather to focus outward. And when you focus outward and you're thinking about your audience, then everything on stage becomes a whole lot more natural.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Just a quick question. Is there anything in your speech that day that didn't work out as you were expecting? And is there anything that you wish you'd done differently, maybe, on the day itself?
No, nothing I wish I would have done differently. It's interesting with humor. A couple of things that got big laughs in Athens there were laughs, but the laughs were lower energy. Now, part of the reason I think is there are a couple of reasons I think. One, different audience, and so you just don't know what that audience is going to take. Mm-hmm. Secondly, many of these people, for them, it was the third round of semifinals they'd watched that day. So they'd seen something upwards of 20 to 25 speeches before they saw my speech. And I mean, I don't know how they do it, because frankly, 25 speeches, I don't think I could watch 25 speeches in a day. So there's a bit of fatigue. And then the last thing was the room, which is not ideal. It was a room that could easily have held, I'd say 600 people, 600, possibly 700 people. But at best, there were maybe 250 people in the room. So it wasn't, if you remember from Athens, and for the people who weren't there, the room was smaller, and we had, I guess, about 300 or so, maybe 350 people really packed in. So there was real energy in the room. You could feel the electricity. In Chicago, the room was much emptier and people were spread out. They were towards the front, but there were still spaces. And that's a real drain on the energy. And so, you know, some of the things just don't work as well in a room like that.
Okay, thanks. That's a very interesting comment you're making there in terms of the energy you get, because you do get a lot of energy from the crowd.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, okay. France, you're muted.
You have to prepare 2 speeches when you go to the international convention, if we are not mistaken. One
Right.
for the semi-final, and if you get to that stage and you win, you can go to the final and you have to deliver another speech. So what strategy normally the competitor use? Do they choose, which one do they choose first to present? The best one, or they keep the best one for the last stage? What do you think?
I think based on people with whom I've spoken, most everybody goes with the speech they gave at district because it's the one that's been developed the most, and it's the one that most people think is the one that has the best chance of getting them to the finals. Everybody wants to get to the finals, so they typically go with the speech they think is the best. Having said that, I really love the speech that I have had prepared for the finals, and it's a speech that I will be giving. I want to give in other venues because I think it's an important message, and I was really hoping to be able to give it on the final stage. Didn't work out, which is c'est la vie. But most people, I think, they go with what they think is the speech that they've been working on.
Okay, that's clear. And this is also what I heard when I asked this to Bill Mansour, with one of my mentors. Mm-hmm. By the way, how do you determine a good subject for a speech? In particular, how do you identify a message that is worth conveying to a big audience?
I think the most important thing is that you need to give a message that you feel strongly about. I think if you don't feel it, if the speaker doesn't feel it, the audience is going to pick up on that. Having said that, the more people you can reach with your speech, the better the chances for success. If you give a speech about, I don't know, parenting, for example, you know, people who don't have kids won't be picking it up the same way as other people might. So I think it's 2 things. I think it's about, first of all, thinking about something that is meaningful for you, and then secondly, trying to think of your audience demographic. What is something that they would be interested in?
Okay, thank you.
Now, maybe a bit of a tricky question. There is a myth, apparently.
Wait a second. If it's tricky, I better have some of this.
Maybe you should. To win the international speech, you need to deal with the 3 Ds: death, divorce, and disease, or one of them at least. Now, is that true? And is there a recipe on how you determine the format of a winning Toastmasters speech?
Well, it's interesting. I think you have to deal with them, but perhaps not necessarily in the way people might think. I do believe that there is fatigue in audiences from hearing speeches about, you know, oh, somebody died, or I got divorced, or I had an illness or an accident. And I don't mean in any way to diminish the importance of those speeches for the people giving them. But I know, I'm speaking from myself, but also to many people I've spoken with, it's overwhelming. And there was this time when it was coming up and up and up and up. And I've heard stories of people who in the audience watching. I mean, they play a little game of bingo with themselves, looking for key buzzwords. Like every time somebody says death or somebody says dying or whatever. So I think there's a really good speech. A friend of mine, Lance Miller, who was the 2005 world champion. Lance is a great guy. He was in Chicago. It was great seeing him and chatting for a bit. We've spoken a couple times by Skype, and we exchange emails on different things, subjects. If you go on YouTube, there should be, I haven't seen it in years, but there's about a 30-40 minute video of him giving a talk at a conference after he had won the world championship. And it's interesting because without taking any, I don't want to ruin any of the surprises in the video, but his main message is you don't have to have had some big dramatic crisis in your life to be able to give a speech. You can give a very good speech, a powerful speech based on just, an everyday activity, something that happens to you, that happens to thousands of people every day. It's about, you can find messages in the simplest things. You don't have to have, suffered a stroke while riding your bicycle on Mount Everest and falling off and almost dying. There are other ways of approaching it.
Okay.
Thank you.
How have your friends and family supported you during the conference? Did you get a lot of support? Was it too much, or was it great?
Nobody supported me. I was on my own. No, far from it. Everybody is great. I mean, first of all, of course, my family is great. They support me in what I do when it comes to speaking. And because I hadn't competed in Toastmasters contests for 5 years, they were happy for me to do it again. I took a nice long break, so I wouldn't be competing all the time. And of course, within the Toastmasters family, especially District 59 and people now in 109, and even very good friends of mine in former District 95, everybody, lots of messages of support on Facebook and social media and things like that, and it's great. It's really great when you've got people behind you and cheering you on.
And can you tell us if you met anybody who is really fascinating at this conference? There were thousands of people, so did you meet someone completely new that you want to follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, or you want to work with in the future?
I met lots of great people. Some names I can't remember off the top of my head. I have a number of business cards. There was one of the keynote speakers, and I couldn't go see her keynote, unfortunately. I'm going to watch it on the video though. Sarah, she was on the cover of Toastmasters magazine recently. A very dynamic woman. Help me out, France. Sarah, she's Los Angeles. She's Muslim. She wears the hijab. Sarah, okay. Yeah, I want to say.
No, I don't know, but we can check all our magazines.
Somebody who's on the conference might know. Anyway, she came up to me because she'd read my blog and she introduced herself. Like, I saw her walking by and I was talking to somebody, and then she turned around and came back, and she's a lovely person, and she introduced me to a friend of hers who was from the Middle East, so I got to practice my rusty Arabic from my days at the UN. And that's the great thing about the conference. You go there and you meet lots of different people from lots of different walks of life.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Yep, no, come, just give us maybe your overall feelings about this international conference. I mean, it's pretty full on because you're competing as well. Lots of people, lots of speeches happening, conferences and all that. What's your overall feeling now that you've come back? It's been a little over a month.
Well, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved, and the fact that it was in Chicago was a bonus. I'd never seen Chicago before, and I got to spend a week in the city and explore it. And it's a beautiful city. The conference itself is always a fun time. It was my third conference. So I competed in Cincinnati and Chicago, and in Washington, I gave a keynote address. I gave a keynote on improvisation to about 1,000 people. And Washington was I probably had more fun in Washington, not because of the pressure of competition, but when you compete, you've got to be, preparing yourself, getting ready. So you miss a lot of these other things. Whereas in Washington, I got to attend most of the other events, and it was a fun thing. So if anybody's not been to an international conference, it's worth doing at least once.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, especially from coming from Europe, to go over to North America, and you realize that the Toastmaster style is not the same. It's not uniform across the world. There are very different kinds of style.
Yeah. Okay. So that was my next question to you: is what would you say to someone who's never been to an international convention to try and convince them, persuade them to actually go to one? What's the main thing that you think we can benefit from? Obviously, I mean, there's so many conferences and keynote speakers. It's
a great networking opportunity. You get to see how the organization functions at the highest levels. And if you go to the annual meeting where they're having votes, you will see that it is like any other human organization, which is all organizations on the planet. It is not perfect. They struggle with things, logistic things, sometimes organizational issues, but it works. And people have, it's a lot of fun. And to go and see to see the competitions is fun. And to the educational sessions are worth attending as well. There's some very good ones.
Okay, thanks.
Our next question was about for the people who never competed, what would you give them as advice in order to enter the competition? Given that the audience is pretty much experienced, maybe we can tweak the question to, would you give us some advice to the people who have already competed and have some experience in that? What should we do? Should we continue even if we didn't win?
Absolutely. My main piece of advice would be to get it well into your head that once the competition is over, you have to disassociate the result from how you did, because you may not necessarily agree with the result. It's obviously when you're in a competition, you're biased, and so you don't have the best perspective. But for me, for example, and this is, if we talk about Toastmasters contests, especially at the higher levels, over in the US, there is very much a preference for, let's say, speeches that are on the theatrical side, people jumping up and down on stage, screaming, acting out traumatic events. There was a lot of that. And, if people like that, more power to them. My style, for me, it's fun to watch, it's entertaining, but is it a speech? I don't know. I always say that if Martin Luther King had been a Toastmaster, he would have never won a contest, because people would be telling him, oh, Martin, you got to step out from behind the lectern. And when you say, I have a dream, you have to gesture dramatically to the sky. And for me, of course, no. I mean, that's Martin Luther King is one of the greatest speakers of all time. But his most famous speech, he just stood behind a lectern and he just talked, and he moved people with the power of his ideas, the power of his words, and the emotion in his voice. Having said that, you know what? By all means, people should compete, because it's a wonderful experience. And especially, there are 4 contests, and I've done them all. The advantage of a contest like the International Speech Contest or a humorous speech contest is that if you advance, if you go from club to area to division to district and perhaps beyond, you get a chance to work on the same speech. And that's where you really learn the art of speechcraft, because if you make it to the world championships or even the district or even division, the speech you give at those higher levels is going to be different from the speech you gave at club. And you will learn something about the process as you go through it. I think in Toastmasters, many people on this call will have had this experience. We give a speech from a manual at the club, and it's great. And then we put it away and we go on to the next speech. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also no rule that says you can't give the same speech at club twice. And why not take the feedback you get from your evaluator and look at your speech and cut what doesn't work, make it tighter, make it better, and give it again. And that for me is the best, one of the best benefits of competing, especially in the prepared speech contests.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, John. I'm going to jump into a question from Patricia, and I'm going to tweak it a little bit, because you've already told us that you had prepared a second speech for the final. So that was ready in the box. But had you already thought of a strategy to, in the event you won at the semifinal, what were you going to do? Would you have, because how much time do you have between semifinal and final? Would you have rehearsed the whole time? What would you have done?
No, I wouldn't have rehearsed the whole time. So the semifinals take place on a Thursday. The earliest ones go at 10 in the morning, and the latest ones, mine, go at 8 at night. So they finish late. The next day, the Friday, is just the conference. There's no competition. And then the World Championship was at, I think, 3:00 on the Saturday. So people had anywhere from 2 days to a little less than 2 days to prepare. I know some finalists, they work all day on the Friday in between. They get the advice of former champions and they go over and over, rehearse. I would have certainly rehearsed, maybe sought a little bit of advice, but I tell you, at that late stage, trying to change too much can lead to problems. So, tweaking a little bit here, a little bit there would be fine. So the plan was, obviously to not overwork it, but certainly go over it, think about it, practice it, get it in my, make sure it was in my head, and then just go on the day and just deliver it.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm going to put my evil hat back on again.
Excellent.
We were talking about the 3Ds before, and the lady who won this year, one of her 3 points was divorce. Now you actually do many speech evaluations on your blog, mannerofspeaking.org. Can you give us your feeling about that speech and some sort of a quick evaluation about that speech, what you thought of it and the points?
Ramona's speech. I liked her speech. I was there live. I watched it for the final. So I saw all 10 speakers. I can tell you, and I was with the group of friends there, when the 10th speaker finished, I said, and the people I were with agreed, that the winners were down to the 3 women who actually made it to the podium and one of the men, Jay Gamache. It was, for me, those 4 were clearly above the other 6. And in the event, it was the 3 women who made it. So I was not surprised with the result. And I think for that competition, I think it was a fair result. My personal preference, the woman who finished in 3rd, Anita, I can't remember what her last name is. For me, had I been a judge, I would have put her 1st. And Ramona, who won, I would put her 2nd. Because for me, and I think you'll be able to see her, they usually put the first top 3 speeches on YouTube. For me, the 3rd place speech, out of all the 10 speeches, it was the one that was truly a speech. There was no jumping around on stage. There was no pulling things out of her hat. She told a story or two, and she spoke from the heart, and it was a beautiful speech. I loved her speech. The winning speech, I thought, was a very good speech. Interestingly, on the semifinals in the morning, I actually saw Ramona give her semifinal speech. I didn't stick around to see who won. She obviously won her semifinal speech. Her semifinal speech was excellent. I liked it better than her final speech, but her final speech was very good. And she had the crowd going. She did well.
That was a question from Helen from Lyon, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you, Helen.
We actually finished the core question, but we still have some secondary question for you. And the audience can jump in with their question as well in the chat box, or they can ask it also loud if they want. We had a question regarding moves. I read one of the finalists years ago, the Asian one. He was rehearsing his speech and rehearsing the choreography. So he was putting post-it notes on the floor to see where he would move exactly. So it was like a choreography. I wanted to know whether personally you do that as well and you study all the moves that you want to make.
No, I know generally where when I'm gesturing. If I'm gesturing in the past, being from the West, if we look at a piece of paper, the past is on the left. But if I gesture to my left, the audience sees it backwards. So I will gesture to my right and come forward. I've never put stickers on the floor, except I have put stickers or marking on the floor when not for a contest speech, I don't think, but for others keynotes that I've given, where I've checked out the stage before, and I know sometimes depending on the stage and the lighting, there are dead spots where it's a bit dark on stage. So I will put a little marker just to remind me not to go past that marker because then I'm going to be a bit in the shadows. So I've done that, but I've never choreographed it that much, because again, for me, then it becomes too rehearsed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it becomes too rehearsed. And fair play to the winners of the contest, especially the second place woman from China who won. I mean, if you watch her speech, it's clearly choreographed. You can tell that everything is choreographed, and the audience loved it. So more power to her. But again, for me, I'd rather try and be just more in the moment and natural on the stage.
Mm-hmm. When did you choose the topic of your second speech, and will you deliver it at the club level or sometime soon?
I'd like to. It would be fun to deliver at club. When did I choose it? I had a few different ideas, but I think I probably decided I would go with that second speech maybe a month or so before the contest.
Mm-hmm.
Not too early, not too late.
Do you have a secret box you keep at home with all sorts of speech ideas?
No. I do have ideas though, in a notebook. Where is it? It's over in my. I always carry around, something like this, a little. It's like a moleskin type book, and
Yep.
if I see something, I will write it down. So I collect ideas in here. So not a box per se, but a little book that I carry around, and it's not just speech ideas, but it's just sometimes it could be a quote. Sometimes it could be something that can fit into a speech, but not necessarily be the big idea itself.
Okay.
I think it's a good practice for people to carry around a little book like that and jot ideas down, because I know for years I never did it, and I know that I've had ideas that have just gone because you never wrote it down.
Yeah. There's a question from Stabriana. I hope I said the name right. And Stabriana is asking, what made the 3 or 4 ladies in the final above the rest of the other speakers? Maybe you've answered the question already a little bit.
No, they were. I'm just trying to. Now I'm thinking of the speech that a lot of the speeches that for me were in the bottom 6. In some cases, you could tell the speaker was was nervous and it was a bit stilted. It wasn't as fluid. The 3 women who made it to the podium, all 3 seemed very much enjoying themselves on the stage. They were present. They were in the moment. The themes, I think, really resonated with people as well that they chose. Things like that. They were just, if you had the same 10 speakers get up on the stage today and do it again, you might get a different result. You never know. Somebody does a better speech. Somebody doesn't speak as well. There's a lot of luck involved on the day. But again, like I said, I think the podium, it wasn't the order that I would have had, but it was a fair result.
Okay, excellent. Now, mannerofspeaking.org.
Yes.
More than 3 million visitors. Tell us about that. How did that come about? How did you start this? How did it get to where it is today?
I had my mom click 1.5 million times. 1.5 million times. It's funny, when I started that blog is now 10 years old, and sometimes I have difficulty. No, sorry, not 10 years old. What I should say, it's 9. I started in 2009. So it'll be 10 years old in May of next year. And when I began blogging, I just thought, I don't know if I'm going to how long I'm going to keep going. I'll just try it and see, because I'd been reading, and some very high number of blogs, 70, 80%, it might be higher. I don't know. I can't remember, but they close or they stop within a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found I really enjoyed writing. I enjoyed sharing the ideas. It was fun. And I was always worried, I'm going to run out of things to say. But you know what? I read a quote not long ago. I can't remember who said it, but it was along the lines of, you can't use up creativity. The more you use it, the more you have. And so there are always ideas popping into my head, comparisons, stories from, fields completely unrelated to public speaking where you can draw inspiration. One of my recent posts, if you go on, there's when I was in Chicago, my daughter and I did this wonderful tour on the river. If you ever go to Chicago, you have to do, it's called the Architecture River Tour, or the River Architecture Tour. And it's 75 minutes. You sit it's a flat boat, you sit on the roof, and it's a guided tour up the three arms of the Chicago River, and you get this running commentary on the different buildings of Chicago. Chicago's famous for the architecture. They have, Spanish Revival architecture, Art Deco. They've got all kinds of different buildings, different structures. And that gave me the idea for a post on how to structure your speech, because it's going to have different structures. So if you're open to exploring areas, especially things that are outside of what you do, every week I try and read articles on things that I know nothing about. It might be, recently I've read things on pandas, on women's fashion, on paint, on something related to IT. I'm just curious. And so I just, I'll see something on a Fast Company or, Vox or some other site. And, I'll just read a post about something I know nothing about. And many times it inspires new articles, new posts.
I have a question for you. And first of all, I type the quote on the internet. It's by Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou. Okay, yes.
Voilà. So we know that. So you told us about your article on the structure of speeches that was inspired by Chicago tour. Will this convention be the source of other articles?
I don't know. I've written about the international conventions in the past. There's nothing that I have a number of articles in mind that I want to write. None of them relate necessarily to the conference. Maybe when I haven't rewatched the winning speeches, but maybe a speech analysis of the winning speech might be in the cards.
That would be very interesting. And after all this stress in Chicago, did you have real fun during the convention?
Absolutely. I had, in fact, the stress, I felt the pressure and the adrenaline, but I was much, much less stressed than I was the first time I did it. And I had fun from day one. And we did, in addition to the river tour, one night with a bunch of European Toastmasters, we went out to the oldest jazz club in Chicago, which was great fun. And my daughter and I also visited the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a wonderful building, some fantastic art there. No, I had a terrific time. It was genuine. I'm so glad that I went. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. So it's close to 8:45. Maybe we can open the floor to the audience who can have their own question. Clara, for instance, maybe you have a question?
Yes, and I have a question, John.
Hi, Clara.
And I believe nobody has asked this question yet. So talking about the audience, so and the relationship between you as a speaker and the audience. So what is the difference between talking to, let's say, 50 people, in front of 50 people, and talking to a couple of hundred people in terms of energy, in terms of preparation? So what are your perception? What is your advice how to prepare to a big audience in comparison to what we do with a smaller audience?
In terms of the content, I would say there should be no difference. You should prepare equally well for both audiences. You need to think about the audience. What's your message? Why should the audience care? If you're using slides, they should be clean. All of that applies whether you're speaking to 5 or 500 people. In terms of the delivery, the bigger the audience, the bigger you have to be on stage. You still have to be you, but you have to be a slightly bigger version of yourself. And so it's things like going early, checking out the stage, walking the stage, getting a feel for it, meet the tech people, test out the microphone, make sure that everything is working clearly. when you're looking to an audience, a large audience, depending on the room or the lighting, you may not be able to see many of them. A few years ago, I spoke at the TEDx Lausanne conference, and there were 700 people in the room. And when I got up on stage, I'd walked the stage before, I tested it at, the previous day's rehearsal, but on the day, because they have 3 or 4 different cameras to get you the speaker from all angles, the lighting was just, I looked out and literally I could see the first 2 rows and everything else was pitch blackness. It was just black. And yet I knew there were people out there. So I had to be looking into blackness and imagining I'm seeing people and I'm talking to people. Big audience, you don't want to forget the people on the sides or at the back. So what I will do is, in my mind, I will mentally divide the room into a 3x3, like tic-tac-toe grid. So front, middle, back, left, center, right. And then what I will do is I will make sure to look at the different areas. If I can see people, I'll pick somebody in an area and I'll look at that person left front, and then middle center, and then middle right, and then back left, and then front right. So it's more in the delivery and just making sure that your gestures are big enough, you move on the stage to connect with people. The content and the preparation should be the same.
So in other words, you keep eye contact without seeing your audience.
If the lighting is really strong, then yes, you have to, you've just got to stare into, not into the lights, but you've got to look into the blackness and imagine you're talking to people. And if you do that, they will feel that you're looking at them. And
what about energies? So do you feel giving an energy, or do you get energy? So
absolutely. Yes. I mean, I love a big audience. For me, the bigger the audience, the better, because things like humor work really well. So people in a big audience, in my experience, tend to laugh more than in a small audience. You might say the same joke or the same humorous story to a group of 10 people and you get a few smiles and chuckles, because people are often shy. They don't want to laugh. But when in the room there's hundreds of people, for some people just feel, oh, I can laugh, and the laughter rolls longer. So absolutely, I love the energy of a big room.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Patricia has a question for you, John.
Hi, Patricia.
Yeah, cheers to everybody. Hi, John. I've got a question, and it's said and pronounced by your French one. Is the accent important? Can our French accent, for instance, be a weakness?
No, I think when I work with people in trainings, I really stress this point. I have great respect for people who present in English when it's not their mother tongue, because I do a lot of speaking in French. I've given talks in Italian, one talk at a German winter carnival, a Fasching in Coburg in German, and I did some little speeches in Arabic when I was in the Middle East, when I was at the UN. So I know what it's like. I'm never as comfortable, because from being from Canada, Ontario, English is my mother tongue. Having said that, the only time I will correct somebody on the pronunciation of a word is when the word is so important to the speech that you have to get it right, because audiences may misunderstand. I'll give you a concrete example, which as a Francophone, you'll appreciate. I was working several years ago in Lausanne with a doctor who was getting ready to go to the United States to give a big speech at a conference. He was talking about a medical device. He's a doctor. The word health came up, la santé. And of course, as you know, the letter H causes Francophones major headaches in English, and it causes Anglophones major headaches in French, because we pronounce it differently. And he kept saying, "elt, elt." Now, I knew what he meant. He meant health. But I stopped him. I said, look, we have to get this word right. I couldn't think of another way of saying health. I said, we have to get this right. So we just worked on it for 3 minutes. Health, health. And he got it, and he was fine. That's the only time. If people feel they have a very strong accent, then there are things you can do. You speak a little more slowly. You pause a little bit more. I think in Europe, we have the benefit of constantly being exposed to different cultures. And in big cities in North America, they have that as well, I would think. But when you get people from more rural districts or areas, or where they don't have a lot of international experience, having a foreign accent for them can be a challenge. But you shouldn't consider it as an impediment at all. It's who you are. It's part of who you are.
Thanks, John.
So Paris 2020.
Paris 2020.
Ah.
Thanks, John. John, when you dropped out of the call at 8 o'clock, I was just talking about rhetoric.
Ah, yes.
You first had a public speaking game. Now we have a bit of time. Can you talk to us about rhetoric and particularly the app? Because I've just recently seen myself, there is an app that might actually be useful to the people here on this forum. So,
well, for those who don't know, my good friend, a fellow Toastmaster who's in Barcelona, Florian Muck, he and we created a board game called Rhetoric. I don't know, do I have one lying around? No. It's a game that's designed we set out with the objective of making a game that would get people up speaking, giving little mini 1-minute speeches, very much like table topics, giving it to their other players and having fun playing. So we did a first edition and it sold out, and then we did a second edition and we're about half sold out. But then we thought, well, it's only in English, and we thought, why not turn it into an app? And we did. And the app is available on both iOS and Android. Pull it up here. I'll hold it up to the screen just so people can get a sense of what it looks like. There's sound, but I've turned the sound off. The nice thing about the app is that people can play in different languages. So far, we have 6 languages. So English, French, Spanish, Russian, German, and Catalan. Catalan because our developers are from Barcelona and they're Catalan and they're very proud, and they said, we must have this game in Catalan. And we said, you want to translate into Catalan? Go for it. Go big. And they did. And it was great. And then we had three themes. The classic theme, which is the same as the board game. We have a business theme and we have a family theme. And each of the themes, here, I'm just going to, so if I hold this up, I don't know if this works. So this is what it looks like on the screen. You pick your theme, you pick your language, you enter the players' names. And then if I just quickly, I'm not going to play the game, but I'll just pull up the main screen. There we go here, done. And so then you get a board that looks like this. And then if you roll the dice, and then the players move automatically, and you land on different topics. And the topics, there are 4 colored squares. One is a topic where you pick a card and you have 1 word on it. You have to give a speech about that word. There's challenge cards where you might get asked from, for example, if it's the business theme, one of the challenges, the other players are underperforming, fire them. So you've got to fire everybody in 1 minute. There's one where you get asked the other players a question and they spin a wheel that determines the structure for how they answer, things like that. And it's obviously I'm biased because I've created it, but it's a fun game. And for me, the best thing that I've seen about the game when people play it is when we were testing prototypes or when we play it with people for the first time. Understandably, many people are nervous. I got to give a speech, and they get a bit nervous. So they give their speech for a minute, they get an applause from everybody else, they sit down. Then they watch everybody else speak, and they're giving them an applause. And pretty soon, it's their turn again. They don't have a lot of time between speeches, so there's not a lot of time to get nervous all over again. And we've seen people who were very nervous at the beginning of the game. After 2-3 rounds, they're jumping up, it's my turn, and they're having a go, and they're having fun. And anytime you can get somebody to have fun giving speeches, doing public speaking, it's a good thing, because then maybe they will realize that when they have to give that business presentation, the sky's not going to fall down.
We are approaching the time. I have a final question, and
is it already?
I would like also to thank you for all those tips that you gave us. It's just amazing.
Pleasure.
Let's say you receive a phone call tonight, and it says, "Okay, please, can you come back to Chicago and do your speech again? Go to this convention." Would you do it again?
Well, I couldn't go tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow I have to fly to Spain, so I would have to tell them no. But if it was later in the year, absolutely, I'd go. It was again, like I said, it was a great experience. It was a lot of fun. It would be weird if they had to reconvene the whole conference again, but why not?
Great.
No, it was a fun time. And again, I would encourage anybody here who has not competed, really think seriously about throwing your hat in the ring. The contest season is changing because now there's no, as you know, there are no longer any fall conferences. I don't know what the contests are going to be like in the spring. I'm not competing next year for sure. I'm not. I've been my approach has always been, compete and then take a bit of time off and do something else, help others, participate in different ways. Some people like to go, and full respect. But for me, I like to compete. I don't put too much, winning is not, if you want to have a successful career speaking or you want to be a better speaker, you do not have to win the world championship. The reality is that most of us will not win. For the simple reason of mathematics and biology. There's only one winner every year. There's 300,000 Toastmasters, and we're not all going to live to 300,000. So,
I take note, John, that when Siegfried interviewed you in Chicago, you said you were not going to compete for many years to come. Now you just say next year. So
no. What I told Siegfried was, he said, what contest are you going to compete? And what I told him is that I'm definitely retired for the evaluation and table topics contest, because I've done those as far as you can go, and it's probably the same for the humorous because I've done it twice and I won twice at district, so that's enough. International, until I win the world championship, which maybe never. I'll never say never again, but for me, it's not a priority. If my schedule aligns and things work out, then tell me and then, hey, there's no guarantee that I make it back, because every year the competition is tough right from the club level. It's very hard.
Yep.
And the minute you become complacent and you think, oh yeah, well, I've been there, so I'll just have an easy road to the district. It doesn't work that way. We've got great speakers in our club and in our area and in our division. And it's a grind the whole way. I once saw a video on YouTube, one of those videos. You start watching something and you go on to the next one. And it was a video of this old lion who was surrounded by all these hyenas coming at it, and he would stand up and growl, and the hyenas would run away. And it was like, I felt it happened to be in the middle of a contest season, and there were all these fantastic young speakers who are up and coming in the district, which is great to see. And I thought, sometimes I thought, God, that's exactly how I feel, like the old lion. You got all these young, hungry speakers coming up. But it's great to see dynamic men and women who are really connecting with audiences. And I think that's the best we can hope for, is that the coming generations of speakers have an impact on people.
Thanks. Well, John, it's 9 o'clock, so...
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you to all the people on this call as well. Thank you for coming.
Thanks everybody for joining.
And wish you a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clara, Pancho, Patricia, Beatrice, Sabrina, Helen. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.